Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of Professionals Unplugged. I'm your host, Utkarsh, and today we have Mel with us. Mel, thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you for having me.
So, let's start with a very basic question. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience, like who you are, what work you do, anything you want us to know about you?
Sure. My name is Mel Sherwood, and I'm a keynote speaker, an author, and coach, specializing in presentation skills and personal impact for business leaders and teams. And I suppose what's most unique, I suppose, is that I combine my background as a performer with my background in learning and development and experience in the corporate world. And I think because of that, I'm really passionate about helping business professionals to turn up at their best in the moments that matter. And because of that background as a performer, I'm quite fascinated by how we use our bodies, our voices, our minds, and our hearts to really connect and engage people, which I think, in this age of digital and AI, being as human as possible is really, really key. So that's a bit about me and my background.
That's really nice and a bit of different and very important thing in terms of any profession, I can say, right? So, can you just take few steps back and tell us like how you got this career or what was your story behind this choosing this career
Yeah,
of keynote
okay.
speaker?
So the story, I suppose, as to, well, I started life as a performer, so I really wanted to study performing arts, and I did that. And at the same time as working as a performer, an actor, and a singer, I had a corporate career. So I wasn't earning all of my money all of the time from performing. And so I worked in mainly marketing and communication type roles in a big corporate in Australia. I now live in Scotland. And so, yeah, I kind of combined that, and then uh, I hit kind of a, I don't know, midlife crisis. I took a belated gap year at age 35 and I went backpacking around Europe. And then I ended up coming to Scotland thinking I would be in the UK for maybe 6 months or so to save some money, work here and save some money, and then travel back to Australia via Africa. And 20 years later, I'm still here. So since I've been in Scotland, I fell into learning and development. I loved that role, but I'd always wanted my own business. And interestingly, I had wanted to I left my learning and development role with an idea for an online platform for the performing arts industry.
Mhm.
And I pitched it to a startup accelerator program. And the people who were running the accelerator said, look, we like you, but we're not really sure about your idea. We don't think it's particularly feasible as a scalable business, but come on the program and prove to us that, it's a good idea. So I left my safe, secure, lovely, well-paid job with holiday pay and all the rest of it on a Friday. And I started in the startup accelerator on the Monday as, an entrepreneur and this entering into this whole new world. And it was only then that I decided to really research whether it was a good idea or not. And so I started to ask around in the industry, and I, interviewed lots of people and had lots of conversations, and realized that while everybody thought it was a great idea, there was a major flaw, and that was that no one really was prepared to pay for it. So I didn't have a business and I'd left my job. So, but what I found as part of that process was that I was really good at pitching the idea. And part of that was, I'd the performing arts background, and I'd won some public speaking competitions along the way, and I'd also done some training in learning and development and that sort of thing. So I knew how to communicate, and people kept asking me to help them with their pitches. So as a result, I did instead of you talk in business about a pivot, I did a complete pirouette and I went in a completely different direction and I started my business that I have now because people kept asking me to help them. And also I did a pitch in front of 600 people at an event, and it was a pitching competition, and I didn't win the competition, but from my very first clients came. So there was someone in the audience who saw me pitch and needed support with their public speaking, and he became, one of my very early clients. And then I also had Scottish Enterprise, who are, big government organisation in Scotland, were at my table and heard me pitch and had a conversation with me and said, look, we've got a tender out at the moment for some work training, pitch coaching, pitch training around Scotland. Would you like to bid for that? And I did, and I got the work. And so it really started from there, and it's just grown over the last sort of 13 years I've been doing that. I was invited to write this book along the way, which is called The Authority Guide to Pitching Your Business: How to Make an Impact and Be Remembered in Under a Minute. So that came out in 2017. And then just this year, I was invited to write a chapter in this book called Global Voices Shaping the Future. And it's expert insights into leadership, teams, and future readiness. So I've written a chapter in that book as well. And I'm right in the process of writing my kind of second bigger book on the Red Effect, which is a program that I developed as a result of a conversation that I had with someone when I'd kind of lost my business mojo a little bit. And if you'd like to hear, I'm happy to tell you that story, but I'm conscious I'm doing a lot of talking here.
No, no, that's really great. And I was going to ask you the same, as I can see a lot of red in your background as well.
Yes.
And we were about to talk about the red effect. So can you just tell us like what really red effect is and the
Yeah,
story
sure.
behind
So how it started because I was feeling a bit, I'd lost my confidence a bit, I'd lost interest, I just had lost enthusiasm for life a bit, and I just couldn't really get excited about anything, despite from the outside everything looked great. You know, business was going well. I just bought and renovated a lovely place to live, and I bought a cute little red convertible car, and it was my first car that I bought in Scotland, and my first red car, and my first convertible. So, but I wasn't excited about doing that. And I think a lot of people who are listening would have a similar experience where you just lose enthusiasm for whatever reason. And so interestingly, when that happens to me, and it happens to a lot of people as well, you spend a lot of time on social media, kind of observing everyone else's life and avoiding your own. Uh, for me, also, eat my body weight in chocolate. I spend a lot of time eating. And the other thing I do is I stop wearing my red lipstick. And I'm kind of known for my red lipstick. You know, people associate me with wearing it. And I wear it when I feel good, and I wear it when I want to feel good. But I got to the point where I just really wasn't even putting on my red lipstick. And so I had a conversation with a good friend of mine. And the moral of this story is make sure you speak to people, and, you know, things can change in an instant. So, you know, and conversations are good. So my friend said at the end of the long conversation, he said, look, Mel, I think the answer is really simple. Everyone associates you with the color red. It's vibrant and energetic and positive. So I think you should just put on your red lipstick and go for a drive in your red car. Just stop being blue and be more red. And those three words, of course, you know, if I was clinically depressed, he would never have said stop being blue. But the words be more red were ringing in my ears at the end of that conversation. And within 24 hours, I bought the domain name bemorered.com, and I'd started writing a book. Now, I'm still finishing that book. I'm nearly finished. And that was many, many years ago. But essentially, what I started to think about, well, what does being more red even mean? And for different people, it'll be different things and at different times. So then I started to think about red as an acronym. And what if it was a flexible acronym? So if be more red in one situation meant that I wanted to be more radiant, enchanting, and dazzling, but maybe in another situation, I might need to be more responsive, empathetic, and diplomatic. So I started to choose words that started with R, E, or D, depending on the circumstances. And so the book is really at its heart, it's all about choice. Every moment of every day, we have a choice. We have a choice about how we show up, how we respond to things. And so the Red Effect really invites you to take a pause. And then I use the acronym again: reflect, explore, and decide. So reflect on the situation. You know, how are you responding? How do you want to respond? What's happening? Understanding the context of the situation. Explore then is exploring different, what I call shades of red. So different sets of R, E, and D words that might be appropriate in the situation. And then decide on how you want to show up. So whether it's you want to be more resilient, enterprising, and deliberate, you know, whatever it might be to help you in that moment.
That's really great. And I think it's really a difficult book to write on with the three words and trying to have acronyms so from three of them, right? So what's the biggest challenge that you have faced till now in terms of the red movement or in terms of the books you have written or public speaking? So what's one of the biggest challenge?
Yeah, interesting actually. You know, I honestly, I see my life as very blessed and privileged. So, my challenges compared to other people are very, very minute. But, I'm like anyone. I've suffered loss and heartache and obstacles and that sort of thing. But to be honest, probably one of the biggest challenges for me, and it might seem a bit weird, but um, I was actually being able to sing. And this is something that happened when I was just a girl. I was 8 years old. And I think a lot of people who are listening would probably, possibly have a similar kind of experience. So I was pretending to be an opera singer. And when I grew up, we had a dress up box and we had all sorts of costumes and fun stuff. And this particular day, I was dressed up and I was wandering around the house pretending to be an opera singer. And someone was visiting our house and he came up to me as I was singing. He went, you're hurting my ears. And he laughed at me and he said, you'll never be a singer. And in that moment, those words, you'll never be a singer, they just shattered a little girl's dreams, basically. And I took those words to heart and I really believed them, that I was never going to be a singer. And so, of course, I'd had this big dream that I as a young girl, I just wanted to perform. I enjoyed it. And so throughout my teens, I decided I'd still pursue a career as a performer, but I had to be an actor because, of course, I couldn't sing. But then I thought, well, I need to be, versatile as an actor. I'll try and have some singing lessons. So I ended up having years of singing lessons, but I never got any better because I didn't practice because I was too scared the neighbors might hear me and I'd hurt their ears. So going on, it was probably 25 or something before I first sung solo in public. And even then it was like with proper fear and paranoia. And then I ended up getting a singing job in a 60s girl band trio. And that was great, except I always felt like the weak link. I always thought that, while the others were singing, or if I was singing and I saw the audience talking to each other, I imagined they were saying, she sounds terrible. What's she doing in this group? And so honestly, this went on for decades. And I still struggled then. That was eventually fine because I had a beehive wig and false eyelashes and costumes. It wasn't me singing, it was a character. But then I had to learn to sing as myself. And even to this day, I still get really quite nervous. But I think, I had a lot of therapy and I got over it. Like it's such a ridiculous thing to think of as a challenge, but it's probably one of the hardest things I've had to get over is the belief. It turns out I can sing a bit, but my belief about my ability to sing was harder to overcome than it was to actually learn how to sing. So I think sometimes it's the biggest obstacles are in our mind.
Right.
And we have to be so careful about who we listen to.
I totally agree with you on this point. And you, as a public speaker, right, and you help people in training as well. So, do you also have that fear or nervousness whenever you step into a stage, or is it gone now? How you deal with it?
No, of course. I think, nerves are normal. And I think what the challenge is, a lot of people come to me and they want to be able to present without nerves. And I'm like, sorry, can't help you with that because actually nerves are going to happen. But what we can do is learn to manage our nerves and control our nerves so that we're in control of them rather than them being in control of us. I think if we embrace nerves and we know that they're going to be there, sometimes reframing them as excitement can really help because actually it's a similar feeling. Your heart's fluttering, that you've got that kind of butterflies in the stomach feeling. And there's a really lovely phrase actually, and I don't know whoever came up with this saying, but I love it. And it's the idea that everybody gets butterflies, but the professionals get them to fly in formation. And I love that visual of just imagining that my butterflies are flying in formation rather than all over the place. So I think learning a few techniques, and this is where my performing background has really helped, learning some techniques, some breathing techniques and being able to really ground yourself and center yourself and focus. Just enjoy the nerves. For me, sometimes I worry if I'm not nervous because I think, the nerves keep me sharp, they keep me on it, they give me that energy. So it's about really embracing them. I'm not saying that I don't get nervous, especially those high stakes things. Of course, I'm a person, I'm a human being, and I think we
Yeah,
have to accept everybody gets nervous.
I totally agree with you on this point. And What's is there any story that you like to share with us? Any incident that has happened with you on stage or anywhere in your life that you think should be heard?
Ooh. Yeah, I think, let me think about that. I suppose, yeah, my whole all my stories at the moment are focused um on my the book that I'm writing. So they're all in my mind. But some of the things that have helped me overcome some challenges or things that I thought that I couldn't do. For example, just here, when I was young, I was learning to ice skate, and seems like a silly story, but you can apply this in so many ways. And I was, when in an ice skating rink, you're sort of going around the side, and if you're first on skates, you're wobbly, and so I'm holding onto the side of the ice skating rink barrier, and I was about to, there's a gap in where you have to come on and off the ice, and I saw another girl who was a couple of years older than me come onto the ice, and she glided to the center, and she did this beautiful spin in the center of the ice skating rink, and she glided off backwards. And I can remember like looking at her and going, I want to be her, And then I had a word with myself. And this is the first time I clearly remember having a word with myself about my thoughts. And I said to myself, well, you're never going to be her if you don't let go of the sides. And so I took that moment to decide to act as if I could already skate. And I started to glide, and I started to, feel my way around the ice skating rink. And honestly, just by acting as if I could skate helped me get into the way of skating. Whereas I just kept saying to myself, it was too hard and I was wobbling and whatever. Again, just changing what's going on up here changes you physically, like changes everything. And in that moment, because I took the moment and I went, okay, I'm going to act as if I can already skate, I was able to skate better. I'd love to tell you I became a champion skater, but I didn't. So, but yeah, the idea that, at any time you can act as if you can do a thing. And I think, one of the things I learned about confidence, I think confidence is a choice. And some people think that's a bit controversial, but we can choose confidence because we don't get confident by not doing things. We have to choose to do things, put ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And I call it exercising your courage muscle. And the more you exercise your courage muscle, the stronger it gets, and the more confident you become. It helps you to build that courage muscle and build the confidence.
That's really nice. And is there any advice that you follow in your life and that you like to share with listeners?
Yeah. So I don't always follow it, but but one of the things I think, if I was to, give some advice to other people, honestly, the key thing is believing in yourself. I spent so much time not believing in myself and uh, not trusting my own intuition. I think it's really important for people to lean into your strengths, really, and your passions as well, because I think I was very fortunate when I was growing up. My parents had both been sort of pushed into jobs that they didn't really enjoy, and they really encouraged myself and my brother to find what we love to do and do it. And if that meant a choice, but as long as we were comfortable with our own decisions. And so for me, being able to pursue that career in performing arts, even though it's led me completely different place to where I thought, it's still that passion. Everything's connected to communication for me and expressing yourself. And so I think, lean into your strengths and your talents, do what you love. The other thing I would suggest to people now is really stay up to date with technology, but also learn to communicate effectively, because it's so important. The more and more we move into this digital age where you don't know what's AI and what's not and whatever, I think people are really going to connect much more with people who are really human. So just, learning to communicate as a human is a really valuable skill.
Right. And last but not least, what's your dream right now?
My dream right now, it's interesting. I was speaking with someone about this morning. Honestly, if I want to be really cliched, it's for our world, ultimately to have peace and where people love and respect each other. But I can't impact the whole world, but I can impact my immediate world.
Mhm.
And so I think essentially I'm probably living my dream. I really enjoy where I live. I'm doing work that I love. I'm really passionate about helping people to show up at their best. I think ever since I was a young girl, I've been able to see people's potential. Might not have been able to see my own, but I've been able to see other people's potential and really help them to believe in themselves. And so the work I do with leaders and teams, helping them to show up at their best, to really understand how to communicate effectively and how to have an impact when they speak. I think, for me, I feel like I am living the dream. But ultimately, the immediate dream is to finish my book, which will be published later this year, called The Red Effect. So make sure you read it. And yeah, and just to keep spreading the message about the fact that, if every single person is able to show up at their best in the moments that matter, imagine what the impact in the whole world will be if we're all making the choice to show up at our best. That's really cool.
That's really great. And I think that's the best part to end this podcast. So thank you so much, Mel, for joining in and sharing your story with us. We hope to interview again once you publish your book.
Oh, I'd
And
love that. Yeah.
that will be really great. So thank you so much and hope you enjoyed it.
Very much so. Thank you for having me.